We'll call the meeting to order. This is the May 16th, 2023 meeting of the Landmarks and Historic Districts Board. It is being conducted both in person and via Zoom participation. Individuals who wish to participate through Zoom are requested to go to the town clerk's portal, whereby they can connect on the live button at the top. And in order to participate, they would have to alert by raising their hand or the chat function the CTV technician who is monitoring the meeting. For any who wish to speak at the podium, the need will be for them to identify themselves and their hamlet or village of residence. Our recording of minutes is done remotely after the fact by a Southampton Town member of the land management division, so they need to know who you are at the time you are speaking. Present tonight, we have board members Stephanie Davis, William Hine, Susan Sherry Clark, newly arrived Jeff Gibbons,
Caught by a train.
Vicky Kahn, Tim Ganettis, and Ed Wisnowski. Also present is the land management liaison, David Wilcox, and two members are presently absent. They may participate by Zoom. That would be Martha Green and Barbara Roberts if they are to sign on. We have a quorum present for the conducting of business. The agenda has been sent out and had as its first item of business the presentation by the Village of Westhampton Beach for the Dick's Windmill restoration and rehabilitation. And we have a number of individuals present in order to make that presentation, both by means of video material and paper distribution that has been done. I would ask the lead for the presentation to take up their respective positions, either at the computer or at the podium, and proceed with it.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Wisnowski and members of the board. I'm Mayor Maria Moore from the Village of Westhampton Beach, and we're here tonight to discuss the plans for the restoration of the Governor John Dick's Windmill, which, as far as we know, is the only working water pumping windmill on the east end of Long Island. We have a wonderful team that's come together. I'd like to introduce them tonight. Here's our Deputy Mayor, Ralph Urban, and our historic preservationist, Larry Jones, who's the one who made us aware of the windmill and the dire need to step in and rescue it. And Larry's also created the specifications to go out to bid, or the draft anyway, that you'll be reviewing. Also on this amazing team of architects, engineers, surveyors, landscapers, they're all donating their time to this effort, is Josh Rosenzweig and Chris Paranello of Austin, Pattison, and Diston that are here tonight. Craig Arm of Derkowski and Arm, he can't be here, or he might be just running late. Bruce Nagel and John Condon of Condon Engineering, David Fox of Fox Land Surveying, and Dan Thorpe and John Hamilton of LaGuardia Design Group. And they've all come together, and they're very enthusiastic, and we've been having progress meetings every month, and they've put together sets of plans and a 3D modeling for you to see tonight, and we're just eager to get your feedback. So with that, I'll let Larry come up and give a little bit of a summary of the windmill's history.
Hi, Larry Jones, West Hampton Beach. Jack L. Jones Building Conservation, prop up old buildings. We're just happy as a clam to have this windmill landmarked. It's really important to our community. As a matter of fact, while we're here, we'd like to see if we can get the mayor landmarked, because we're afraid she might go on to higher office, which would leave us in the lurch in our little town.
Stay on track here.
So we're intending on, with the mayor's prodding, to have this windmill operable, that is with the wind making it work. The pump is being, an antique well pump is being restored in Ohio by one of the last windmill companies producing windmills. And they're doing that. I hope they're doing it for free. I guess I'll find out. It's supposed to go, I think I have to go drive over there and pick it up. But we want to get that early on so we can plan to include it. And we had the good fortune of finding both halves of an early antique well pump. Part of it was underneath the windmill, part of it got buried and got dug up and left in the debris pile. So I found all that stuff, and we're able to put that together, and we want to make that part of a museum display inside the windmill. We have people that we've been talking to. Culver Plumbing it's been around since 1908 in our village. They apparently did heavy business in windmills, of all things. So we're hopeful that we're going to find a whole bunch of history that's absolutely related to our village that will go in the first level of this windmill, so when it's open, it can be a museum. We haven't found the need to heat or cool the building, so it didn't have these items in it to start with, obviously. So we're proposing not to insulate the building because it wasn't insulated. We're proposing not to put heating or cooling in it. I suppose if we had to, we could put in a ceiling fan on 2 levels, first level, if we needed to, the second level. But the other windmills that we have available out here, none of them that I know of are heated and cooled. So, but we're happy to do that if we need to. The other items, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. We'd like to use ironwood if we could, or white oak if we could find it, but ideally ironwood out of South America for the shaft. And it's going to be like a 7,000-pound item, real heavy, but it's bulletproof. And one of the weak links in these windmills that decay and fall apart first is the wind shaft and the blades. The blades are meant to be removed, but you leave the wind shaft intact. So we'd like to, if we can do it, use this higher quality, semi-indestructible wood. If not, we'll go with white oak and try to flash it, but it's very difficult to use what we normally always use, like 20-aught lead coat copper, to flash a square shaft that has mortise holes in it. So, and this windmill, one different thing about it than some of the others is it appears from the early days on it was painted. The blades were painted, and most of the other windmills, they didn't bother painting the blades. So we're anxious to do that, and mainly to try and make them last longer. We can use cedar on them. We could make them out of mahogany. It's long pieces of mahogany, but we could do that. So I don't know what else. We have paint colors that we've supplied you with some samples of that we've found. We have an original door. Here's a question that came up. We have an original doorway. It's about 32 inches wide. If we want to make it handicap accessible, we don't have use for that doorway. We're going to have to make a new one. So we're figuring it'll be a 3.0 door. We'll duplicate the molding profiles and everything on the door that we have that is an antique. And then the windows and doors all get storm shutters or storm panels. And then let's see what else. We will put glazed storm windows over these windows. And even though the structure is not insulated, heated, or cooled, we propose to do that to make our windows last longer. It protects them very well from the weather and stuff, so they can be taken down if we want to. We want the shutters operable. In time of storms, we can close them. I do that on my house. It saves having to repaint them quite as often too. And let's see, is there anything else? No, unless you have some questions. I really don't.
I have one trivia question.
Yeah.
I noticed that the top of the windmill is proposed to be painted a red color.
Yeah.
Is that the color that it was originally?
We have it. It's down to the sheet. It's turned metal. It's not galvanized, and it's down in the bottom of the historical society. We have the piece, and we saved it, but it's pretty ratty condition. So we'd like to have that hand hammered, sort of repoussé copper hammered out and primed and painted, and it was that red color. And also, one of these pictures here shows the windmill. All these windmills always had wind vanes on them, and this one was a rooster. And the fun thing about this particular rooster is that when you look real closely at the photographs, the roosters that are available today as wind vanes, it's the same rooster. It's unusual. I mean, everything. It was an unusual shape and style, and this rooster was, because of the height of the building, 40+ feet. The rooster is about this big. It's like 5 feet, and so it's not a little tiny thing. And there's one company that makes them, so we can still get them. We're thinking with that money from the GoFundMe money, perhaps, that we would buy the wind vane. It has an extended. We have to have an extended shaft on it, and it'll have in the northwest the quadrants put on it, and we definitely want to, which this building didn't have, but we want to put on it. We want to put lightning protection on it. We'll tie it into the wind vane, and any place else he thinks we need them, but maybe on the 2 ridges of the dormers, but then on the wind vane for sure. And we feel like we'll be in pretty good condition. It's going to have very good air circulation through it with no insulation, and we discovered that it has about 12 or 13 inches of crisscross lattice on the base, went around the base, and we'll be putting that back so it gets real good air circulation underneath it. And I don't know, can't think of anything else per se.
Oh, I know.
What?
But I was just gonna, I don't know if everybody is aware, but when we became knowledgeable about the windmill, it was at a point in time where the new homeowner had an application to demolish the home and the windmill. So there was some urgency because they wanted to move forward with their plans. So what we did was we needed to get it off their property and onto a village property. And with all the overhead wires and the time it would have taken to work with the utilities, we decided it was more expeditious to cut it into sections, move it. So we had a parade down Main Street with 4 sections of the windmill on flatbeds. And now it's currently on the Great Lawn, which is a CPF property in the village, and in the back, and it's all shrink wrapped and on pallets and well protected. But that's what's going on, that we need to restore it to its original condition by putting the pieces all together, and that's what
we have a
this
really
team's
good
been doing.
structural engineer, John Condon.
Yes.
And
He couldn't be here tonight, but exactly.
he's a very, very good guy to work with, and very talented, and doesn't over engineer stuff.
Mhm.
But what we're looking for, we're looking for gusset plates to reattach these pieces together, and it looks like it's going to work fine. And even though it's a heavy load, if you put 7,000 pounds of shaft up on top, we think it'll work out fine. And this windmill had a water tank on the 3rd level. It pumped the water up and went into the tank, and then it gravity fed out to wherever they wanted it to go. And so we'll be putting a water tank back in there. And
We thought we would leave one wall open so you could see the structure, the original structure in the wall, and then the other walls would be, what do you call it, beadboard, where we could put up photographs, framed photographs of the original structure and the whole process. So we want to use it as an educational tool, and we'll have an external pump so that people can pump the water, and it's going to function, and it's going to
Yeah,
be
we
great,
were-
and there'll be a hole in the ceiling so people can see up through the 2 stories to see the water tank. And those are just some of the features, which,
Well, it changed a little. I think what lately we've been talking about is that open panel, that open section you were talking about putting. We thought now, well, maybe we'd make that a door with the siding, where it matches the whole room, but you can open it and then look at the framing, which.
yeah, as long as you can
Then
see
we
the
could
framing.
hang stuff on it if we need to, so.
Yeah, and then we did engage the architects, LaGuardia Design Group, to, because we knew it was important to make sure the grading on the Great Lawn was appropriate, and the walkways going up to it, and, you know, we're gonna do some minimal landscaping and keep it historic. So anyway, if you
Yeah, I think
have
that's it.
anything else to say,
No,
Josh is
you know,
gonna come up.
One thing that's real important is we want this windmill, it's 80 feet from the corner, from the circle in 2 directions. And we want it close to Main Street so that it's accessible to people with children, but also to handicapped people that can come in on the walkways and have a short distance to go and can get into the mill. A lot of the mills, you can look inside, but you can't go in them. We want them to be able to go in there, and we have a minimal rise so they can, you know, don't have to zigzag all over the place to get in it. But we think that'll work good, but we figured if it was further out in the middle of the field, trucks, and they have so many exhibitions and things, that all the paving would be destroyed for the average person driving along in a wheelchair or something. So that's the reason it's located where it is.
Hi, everybody. Joshua Rosenzweig and Chris Parnello of Austin Patterson Disson Architects. Nice to see you. This has certainly been a privilege for us, and unfortunately so many others who are not here tonight to represent their work, who, when I look at this title block filled with all these wonderful design professionals, I never thought I'd see a title block with so many architects on there before, but nonetheless, it's here. But it's really been a privilege for us to be a part of this. For me, windmills, one of the reasons that I got into design in East Hampton. And being a part of this, and with the great knowledge Larry brings to the history of the windmill, our goal has always been to preserve what the windmill had originally and moving forward to that goal. So, you know, we've got together, measured the exact, you know, dimensions of all the windmill structure and documented everything in the pamphlets and the packages that you see in front of you. We've gone to the great lengths of modeling the entire windmill frame by frame, member by member, to really understand the dynamic complexities of how they go together. More importantly, because it needed to be cut into sections. So that was always a challenge, how we're going to put it back together. John Condon, as Larry had mentioned, who is a fantastic structural engineer, has certainly socialized with us the idea of how to bring it back without bringing inauthentic materials into the mix, with an onus on stressing not to bring too much steel support visibly, because again, we want this windmill to become an educational experience for those in the community. One of the reasons, and we'll go through a little video in a moment, that you see cited on these pages, the windmill in the Great Lawn surrounded by a perimeter of a circular path with 2 ways to get to the public access. The reason for this was to really be able to experience this windmill from a 360-degree perspective. And we felt that the lawn around that path, very minimal plantings, LaGuardia Design has come up with some very good ideas here, would really mark the windmill in where it is and allow it to be more of an experience than just facing the windmill. And it faces the great traffic coming in, so I think it'll be a wonderful presentation to anybody coming into West Hampton Beach from either side of Main Street. In terms of trying to remain authentic but also responsible construction-wise, little things like the foundation, which I can click to on there, but it's on your pages as well, reinforced concrete foundation being poured underneath the point loads of the windmill allows it for it to function properly under today's wind loads, tying down all the structure and being a safe proponent to the village, but also skinning the foundation with the appropriate brick that was prevalent in the original design, and even to the degree of, I wonder if we can we pull up that one image, Chris, of the foundation? Thank you so much. even to the degree of trying to create these concrete tentacles that were subgrade, under the ground, cannot be viewed, in order to support locust posts that do project out of the grade, as you can see here in that little graphic. So where Chris is zooming in, our actual reinforced concrete foundation with our footings, we're actually creating footings about 3 feet under the ground that spandrel out to support the skirt of this windmill. So for us, it was worth that extra effort to bring in that locust post concept of what was holding up the skirt previous, and allowing it not to deteriorate too much in the surface and soils as a typical structure built today would, but to allow someone to get down on their knees and look through the skirt of the windmill and potentially see it coming up, and really identifying that, wow, there's a locust post. Now, they're not going to be able to excavate, not without a permit, and see what we're doing, but we're being in a way reflective of what was there, but also responsible to construction in today's day and age. And we followed that through all the other components of the building. Bruce Nagel, who's not here tonight, has done a thorough documentation of the exterior windows and doors. We have worked, of course, all of this wouldn't be possible, especially without Larry's knowledge on all matters here. Yes, it get a little red in the cheeks. But have done a thorough documentation of what we have on hand to recreate the exact trim profiles to the best of our knowledge, recreate the fundamental wood species minus the ironwood, which we think will do a lot better over time and create something that will last the test of time on all the windows and doors. Colors, not only that, but the species of the material in itself. The glass in which it is, it's not laminated glass. We're putting back the proper specifications in the glass with the muntin bars. Whether it's putty glaze or not, these are very important details to the architecture. Not just the notion of that window, but every detail that should go back that's reasonable to last the test of time. And that's what we're doing as a group here. The siting of it, thank you to LaGuardia Design and also David Fox for all the work that he's done surveying all points, didn't come lightly. We had looked at multiple locations from our first meeting to where we are today in what impact visually it would have on the village, how we're going to site this, and I'm very excited about where it has ended up. If it's okay, I'm going to switch places with Chris, and if the internet's not too buggy, take you on a quick tour of the building three-dimensionally. It is 100% accurate to the proportions of the building and to the scale of the site. There's no imagination in the 3D rendering except for, well, you can't hear the birds chirping, but they're there.
Before I forget, we gotta thank a few people. Julie Green has been just fantastic getting us into, I don't know how many windmills. A BB mill we've been in 3 times in freezing winter, and her cohort sitting there. You'll see a bunch of his photographs right here, and we promise we're going to give credit next time before we start gluing them down. But these beautiful photographs are mostly his work, Matt's. So.
Tell us his name.
Is that?
Could you say his name?
Yeah.
You can give him credit. If you don't say his name, we don't know who he is. What's that push?
Yep. Sorry, unfortunately, the 3D software is too powerful for a laptop, so I have to remote into our office, one of our terminals, to run it. Just take a second. Maybe Chris, say something about the exterior materials.
Sure, so we'll take you through the model in a second. But what you'll see in the renderings is some of the materials that Larry spoke about. So all the roof and wall shingles are American yellow cedar. In the painted colors you have in your pamphlet, there's a red copper color on the roof and a white on the wall shingles. And then the cell frames are the same white color, and as Larry said, we're thinking about possibly mahogany for those. And then we'll zoom in on one of the windows, and you can see the shutter detail, and you can see the green color that's in your pamphlet on the shutters there. And in terms of the site, Josh spoke about the siting of it. LaGuardia plans to use some of the materials that are found in the village around, so like the brick pavers that are along Main Street could be used for the pathways that lead from Main Street and from Potunk Lane. And then we'll see the planter bed around, which will have some native grasses and low maintenance plantings around the base of the windmill.
It was working a few minutes ago. Yeah, everybody saw it. It was working. I apologize.
Yeah, it's really been a team effort, especially, starting with the property owners, Adam and Dee Dee Hutt. They didn't have to allow us onto their property, and they delayed their project so we could come in there and, cart it away to safety. But we appreciate them.
I think they thought it was a water tank tower or something. They seemed quite shocked because they asked me, what windmill are you talking about?
Then they thought they might be able to incorporate it into their new house design, but that didn't work for them. And it's pretty costly to restore something like this. So we were grateful to them to give it to us. And then the Historical Society helped us with the GoFundMe to raise the money to relocate it, and the Chamber of Commerce. Everybody's been involved and helpful, and we're hoping the Community Preservation Fund will make some funds available to us to offset the cost of the restoration.
Who will be the official steward of the windmill?
Well, I believe it's going to be the village. We're going to, the Historical Society, they're small, and they don't have the funds to really be the stewards of it, but we're certainly making it available to them whenever they want to use it for tours or giving out pamphlets, or, even when there's events on the Great Lawn, they could, sell their hats and water bottles, and we want them to be part of the whole process.
We want to decorate it for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most of the windmills out here get decorated, so we figure we put lights. We'll put lights.
Lights on the blades.
What is your expected time frame? What are you hoping for?
Well, I'm hoping, as soon as we get the certificate of appropriateness, we'll finalize the bid documents, and out to bid we go, and we'll probably give a month and a half, 2 months for the bids to come in, and then we'll have a board meeting and select the contractor, and I'm hopeful we could start this fall, because I'm very optimistic about things, so we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know what, you might look at this and say, these look great, or this could be a lengthy process. We don't know what to expect. It all depends on what you do.
Is there going to be any kind of plans for illumination or lighting of the structure?
We do want to have lighting. We don't want to violate any dark skies laws. Maybe, Ralph, you could talk to the lighting aspect.
We've considered lighting from the eaves of the windmill itself, down lighting, and limited garden lighting. We want to have it exposed, prominent, and visible through the evening, just in general, but also don't want to violate the dark skies. And I would like to reiterate that the location was not arrived at easily. We had different perspectives, some saying we want the panoramic vista put in the middle of the field, and then others said no, up here, and others wanted accessibility. So I think we've come up with a great solution to all those and putting it where it's being located. It's accessible and a panoramic vista, and if you stand on the site, it's directly opposite St. Mark's Church and steeple, and it's a New England kind of feel to it. So we're very proud of that accomplishment. It wasn't easy. Any other?
That's fine. The video is
I'm trying one more thing. If it's okay, Chris is going to take you through the still renderings in case this doesn't work.
Okay,
I'll
fine, that
try
would be
one more.
helpful too. And the camera from there will capture what you're
Great. Uh,
presenting.
Great, so I'll just, I'll walk through each of these still images just to orient you to where we are. So in this aerial shot, you can see the traffic circle between Main Street and Potung. And as we said before, the windmill's about 85 feet or so off of each of those lanes, which you can see in this image, has a very prominent feeling from this intersection. This view here in the bottom right. This view here in the bottom right is the approach from Main Street. So there's two crosswalks across Main Street and Potung, and our new pathways will coincide to these, speaking to the accessibility from both of these lanes. So from Main Street, you have a very nice approach from the curb cut up the existing sidewalk and then to our new path. And similarly on the other side, this is the opposite path from Potung. As we come up the path and circle the base of the windmill, you can see we've allowed for this planting bed between the circular walkway and the base of the windmill to soften the way it sits in the landscape. And then the circular path continues all around, which invites the users to come in. And then on the northwest side is the entrance door, so facing Potung Lane. And as Larry said, that's the original location of the door, and we widen it for accessibility.
There's two doors on this windmill. One door was put in going on the east side. Looks like in the 1950s. We want to eliminate that door and go back to the single original one. And with regard to the electric, I think we've got it pretty well covered. Inside, we're going to have outlets on all levels, but they can put window candles in the windows and run those off a low voltage electrical. And if we want to do a ceiling fan or two, we could do that. And there'll be enough quad outlets on the exterior to, if there's something comes up seasonal, and then whatever lighting, if they want to try and light the outside, the blades or the shaft of the windmill, all that's doable off the electric, the south side. And there was something else. The drive. We're trying to come up with an electric motor transmission drive system that's simple, that will allow, by flipping a switch, to make these blades go around without any canvas, just to make them slowly go around. And there'll be times, probably about 80% of the time, then you might want the blades to turn, but you don't want to have to climb up there and put canvas sails on. And we'll definitely be doing the sails, but we're not going to leave them up year round, or even in foul weather. And there's a reefing process, not unlike a sailboat, where you fold a corner over, or you roll it up from one side to the other and tie it off. And it's going to be a great job for small children or orphans to climb up there and deal with that canvas. We're talking about using reproduction synthetic sailcloth used for schooners. It matches the color of our early canvas and has the same texture and stuff. And it's easy to get and easy to sew and all that sort of thing. So let's see. Well, the only last thing I'd mention is that the shingles are steam bent. They're on the roof. It has a pronounced curve to it, and we hate to do it this way. But those up there, they're on it. I think they soaked them in hot water, and they got them to bend without breaking, which is you can't usually do with hot water, but it looks like that's what they did. And they surface nailed the butts of the shingles down to keep them from curling up. And we don't want to have to do that. We'd prefer to steam bend them and have them hold their shape. And it requires a male and female form. You heat it up. You got about 3 seconds to get it from steam box into the thing, and then into the mold. And then it sits there for about a minute and then it keeps its shape. And we really would like to be able to dip these shingles and then put them on and dip them in finish. But the finish gums up hand planing. We have to hand plane these shingles with little rabbet plane because they taper pretty abruptly as they go up to the ridge. So we need those to form that shape, and it doesn't work to have them painted or even stained with a hand plane because it just makes a gummy mess. So we're going to have to, I guess, just paint them real good from the exterior. We brush paint everything, and we're accustomed to using 2 prime coats and 2 top coats, so I don't see any difficulties with getting that part done. Finish-wise, I don't think there's any other issues, really.
I have one question about the landscaping. I see you have landscaping right around the edge of the foundation. I assume that there'll be some sort of irrigation system for that landscaping. How are you going to accommodate that with wooden foundation members there?
Most likely a drip system.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just concerned about putting
Yeah,
water around a foundation.
We hate the buildings getting sprayed for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we want to be mindful of your time, and it doesn't look as though we're going to be able to.
But
get
as the
this
board
to-
requested a digital copy of all the plans that you have there, we will give you a video that approaches the windmill, circulates around it, looks back, and maybe even goes in as well. We can send that digital video to the same location or Dropbox as the digital files as well.
Perfect.
Is there anything else that you think you might need us to supply?
Let me ask my fellow board members here, are there other pieces of information that you need for the progress of this?
I don't think there's additional, for me, additional resources here, but just had a question again on the landscaping. Will there be a lighting plan for the landscaping, for the walkways and the
Yes.
general illumination somehow for the windmill, because it'll be a feature, evening feature, it'll distinguish the village?
Yeah, that's something that the landscape architects will provide for us.
They're working on providing downlight close to the path and around the entire circle so that there are no lights on the building themselves, and it just lights the paths for circulation and safety.
Okay.
And that's really at the heart of everything we've done about being subtle in terms of making the building sing for what it is. And as long as it's, handicap accessible and there's enough light to light the pathways, we're feeling confident that that's enough light for the facility.
Is that lighting going to be in the bid package that goes out?
It would have to be, yes.
Okay.
We'll have to specify the fixture, and we'll also have to specify the wiring to it. It's most likely going to be a low voltage wiring, and it'll most likely be of a 60, 70, 300 Kelvin, something that's nice and warm, not cool.
Yeah.
And it'll all be specified, a lighting plan as well.
Okay, that information should be provided for review too, if it's going to be part of the COA before you put this out to bid.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks.
And there'll be signage? You have plans for signage? In the
Well,
park
we
area
certainly were
or
going
on-
to have on the interior the photos and descriptions of the original windmill and the changes it underwent. We hadn't talked about signage on the exterior.
We
Is
have
that part of
Yeah,
something that?
that could be a later thing, a later COA, if it's not in the bid package that you guys
does
need to
not
put
have
out
to.
soon.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you had suggestions of what you think would be, appropriate, we're glad to look at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question, just as a matter of curiosity, not dealing with the restoration so much. And is there any kind of question with respect to the prevailing wind that blows through the village?
Yeah, we did consider that when it came to the placement.
We put it back to where it's facing, it apparently originally was facing a north to northwest. And it seemed a little peculiar when the beach is the other way, south. And, but apparently, that's the way he used it that way. And,
Please stand at the podium.
yes, sorry. Yeah, the interesting thing about these windmills, the water-powered windmill, or the water pumping windmills, turned clockwise. The sawmills and the grist mills and stuff turned counterclockwise. Who knows why? I haven't found anything that says a good reason. But this one apparently faced north, and it could be that it was double. I don't know how they did this, but they put basically a jacket. They could double sides, put sailcloth on both sides of these blades, and it's almost like if you had a sack or stocking and you pulled it up and tied it on, then no matter which way the wind blew, it would be hitting that smooth surface, and which is different than the way most of the other windmills. The other windmills had the ability to turn. The BB mill has this fantastic, more people need to get in there, this fantastic rotating top, the whole roof and everything turned on it. The one at Watermill has that long angle shaft coming down with a wagon wheel, and you had to go out and spin it around. But these things are fantastic, and people need to appreciate how this all worked. And matter of fact, this windmill, unlike some of the others, I just read recently that whoever operated the windmill had to have about an 18 to 20 foot long, I think they were 2-inch or 2.5-inch diameter, usually octagonal for whatever reason, shaft with a hook on the end of it. And the point of the shaft was you could run outside and stick it up there and grab hold of the bottom of the blades and pull it down. Had never occurred to me that you might have a need to get the blade down before you could climb up it and put I had always assumed going into this that all these windows lined up were how you tied the sail on, and that's not the way it worked apparently. They have windows and they're all in the line, but it didn't seem to have much to do with putting on the canvas or taking it off. So we found that sort of interesting. We want to make sure. The only thing we might have to make a change on, it's reflected in these drawings. We're trying to give 8 feet of head clearance between the bottom of the blade going around and a person, and without having to issue helmets to visitors. And so we're going to have, we've shortened the blade slightly, but we have lattice work that tends to raise this building up another 13 inches. And so it could be, if we put that lattice work in around the base, raises up a foot, we can add a foot back onto the blades. And for no particular reason, it'll work the same way, either way. And these had that wind shaft, the gadget that holds the sails, is sloped traditionally at 9 degrees. So it's not just a shaft sticking straight out of the top of the building, it's canted slightly. And they like that, and then these are very complicated, these sail blades. If you have a chance to go by whose university is that now, Stony Brook? They finally got the blades made that have been missing from that building for that windmill for a year and a half. And I had to go through, Ralph, you were helping me with that. We were trying to find who made the blades, and come to find out it was their staff in their own shop built these blades. And what a sweet job. And we're lamenting because they need money bad. We think a great way to get them some cash would be to get them to make the blades for us. These blades have a twist to them, and it shows up in those drawings, but it's every mortise that's about 12 inches apart is 2 degrees different than the one below it. And by the time you get all the way up to the top, it creates this twist. And it's real cool. And it's not obvious at all until you get out and start looking at it.
It's obvious to this young man here.
He knows.
Who built those blades in 3D.
Yeah. But you know what's really crazy is the BB mill has drawings were produced for HARE, Historic American Engineering Record, and those were all hand measured, hand drawn, and to get those twists and stuff, you get to spend 2 or 3 years doing that. And even though it took you for a long time, it didn't. These folks, I don't know how they ever did it. It's amazing. So that's all I got.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Are we of a positive mind about this? To say that it looks good and we approve of what's taking place. What we might have to do is do some paperwork on a certificate of appropriateness to basically say that what has been presented is appropriate for the landmark being restored. So, and we'll probably take some time, a couple days or a week or so, to try and collect our wits with respect to that. So,
Well, thank you. That's incredible, and we appreciate the time and your consideration. And if there's anything you do need, please, you've got my email. Let me know, and we'll get it to you.
well, we appreciate the presentation, and it's certainly impressive, and it's novel. It's not every day that we see a landmark designated and then it's picked up and moved to another
Yeah.
place in pieces and reassembled. So it's probably part of the unique culture of the Hamptons that this kind of thing takes place. So, but I appreciate, and I think the entire board appreciates all that the village of West Hampton Beach is doing with respect to this. It's, an innovative and novel approach to things, and it's in partnership with the town of Southampton as well. So we hope to see the project be celebrated in the coming years.
We're looking forward to that too. We're very grateful for you for your help and helping us preserve some history. No, I'm not going to talk about lopped trees right now, but we're glad to be able to save a piece of history. With your help, we're going to make it just perfectly historically accurate. So thanks. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. And we'll reorganize ourselves for our next items on the agenda here. Thank you all for everything that you've done.
Thank you.
Would you like to keep the full set of drawings? You're welcome to keep that.
Do you want this?
If, yes, we'll keep them, and if they are not capable of being stored, we'll return them. But I think it's good for us to have reference to.
Yeah.
You guys want to keep any of these pictures?
I don't think we have a place to
Can I see the yellow one? Yeah, really quick.
No, you should,
Yeah, we can.
The old guys up there working, those are there's like 4 of them. And,
Yes,
Do you
thanks.
need them for your presentation tomorrow night, or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
that is cool.
Actually, this one is, this has been done just after they finished work on it.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of
All right.
finished.
Thank you.
These are spectacular.
I can't believe we found this. The neighbor came over with that big.
The neighbor, wow.
And it wasn't a photograph, it was a
mine.
photocopy.
That's good.
I couldn't believe it.
They were able to restore that photo.
But then I asked the guy, I said, do you remember the blades ever being here? He said, oh yeah, they're all buried out there by the fence.
No way.
So I went over on a weekend and dug it all up, and I found the clamps, held it in, and the clamps told us that the wind shaft was 20 inches square.
Oh my gosh.
So it worked out great.
It's amazing. Historical Society meeting.
Yeah, we're gonna keep that.
Just like. It's good. It's really supposed to be one. looking for you. Oh, it's all gone. So that eyeball, like, winking is very, so cute. It's being apple.
It seems rather odd that Bruce Nagel is associated with this project. But
Yeah.
it just doesn't seem like something that he would be involved in. Because the last, like, 20 years, everything I've seen of his has been like this flashy Las Vegas look. Like, sleek, modern, water running off of everything. And, you know? And here we have this, like,
So we have our minutes that have been circulated. And Stephanie, you asked for corrections?
Yes, there's two revisions. One is that David Wilcox was actually not present at the last meeting, so that will be removed from the list here. And then in the circulation concerning, that you circulated this afternoon, David, concerning video conferencing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I was having a back and forth with Renee in terms of, do we have to note board members who are attending via Zoom differently than board members who are here in person? And according with those procedures, I have to note the video conference attendees separately. So I will make that change because Vicky was present last week or last month
But
via
via Zoom.
Zoom. So we'll make those two changes. I haven't received
One
any of the
other thing, and I
comments.
wasn't here, so I won't correct the meetings, but I think Julie was here also, because Ed was conferring with her in the audience, I believe, but I don't think she was listed
Yeah, were you
as
here at
a
the last
guest
meeting?
or,
Yeah, okay.
all right,
I will then add that.
for you. Ex officio member. I guessed it was you.
So if there are no other problems, the minutes that I did send you some corrections?
Yes,
Then-
what I circulated afterwards included your
Okay.
revisions.
All right.
Yep.
So if there's no problems, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion.
Vicky moves, I second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Okay, the next item on the agenda is construction permit applications. The first one is 86 Bay Avenue, North Sea, for an already completed garage conversion of a circa 1940 building. And let me get the, let me bring that up here.
Just like the brackets.
League Central. I think it's-
This is the,
It's not
what's
connected.
it?
This must be the studio.
Oh, no signal, why is that?
Is it connected?
Is the HDMI cord plugged in?
Yeah, they might have just.
There it goes.
Yay.
Yep.
Oh, right.
Just was loose.
Oh,
Oh. That explains maybe why they were having problems with the video connection.
No, that was a remote connection issue.
Yeah.
The Wi-Fi wasn't strong enough.
Yeah, so that's something to be checked out in the future. Okay. This is the application photograph that was sent along. I did have, I thought, another file on this, but let me just go to the place. This is the location in North Sea. What you see here is the 2023 image of it. And I had you can see better from the oblique what was done. Let me go back the other way. This is the property here, with the cars now parked on the close to the street. But this was the garage that exists.
Yeah.
And if I go back to 2018, you can get a better sense of it. I don't see the patio in back. The rear patio was expanded.
It's not a patio, it's actually just a raised flat platform with gravel, and then there is a small deck that was added.
Yeah.
I was there this afternoon.
So for some reason, this doesn't want to catch up here. It's the wrong date. That's what it is. 2018 Eagle Eye, you want 2018. There you can see how it was a garage and transformed. They've also re-sided or redone the shingling on
Actually,
on the
no,
house.
it was only painted. It's
Only
the
painted?
original cedar siding,
Okay.
tongue and groove, yes. And most of the windows on the bungalow itself are original that were reglazed by the owner and are in great shape. The garage is only the flat roof part that's shoved right up against the property line of those
Yes,
bushes.
it,
And had a flat roof that apparently when these people bought the house, there was a deck up there that you can't access from the house. There was an exterior stair in the back of the house that led to that deck. They took the exterior stair away. And they painted the house black. But it had, all the trim is white.
yeah, we'll go back to the 2021 picture there, so. But there's nothing of character. It looks like it was built as a uninsulated camp style.
They said it was on locust posts.
Yeah. So it's in a neighborhood also of like buildings
Yes.
with similar histories of being added onto and
Right.
changed over a period of time. It's not in AKRF, not noted. I think the AYB on the assessors property
1920.
information is 1920, but I looked on the 1930 and 1938 aerial maps, and it's not there. So it is post-1938 as well. So if there's no problem, we have no objections to it.
To be clear, it's for work that's already complete. The work's already complete.
And the work is complete,
Yeah,
and
and-
we'll respond accordingly.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
Yeah, okay.
As far as intrusion on the property, though, that garage has always been there, and all they did was add windows, and they left the rest of the house the way it always was, or
Yeah.
well, I should say for the last 50 to 60 years was. So, for work done jobs, this was a pretty good one.
Okay, no objection. 1904 Scuttle Hole Road. That is, has an AYB, I think, of 1930 on the assessors database. This is a curious house. Let me get a earlier picture overhead so you can get a clearer view of what's here. This is the property. It's a very elongated house with multiple additions over many years, and sits in a neighborhood of growing large contemporary houses as well. The only thing that I found appropriate with respect to this house was basically that historically of note was that it was once owned by an artist by the name of Bernice Hunter. She was born in Chicago. Her birth name was Bernice Berkman, I believe it was, and she was born in Chicago, came to New York, became part of the art scene in Manhattan, and as that Manhattan art scene in the 1940s and 50s moved east out into the Hamptons, East Hampton and Bridgehampton and other places, she moved with it, and she bought this property in Bridgehampton in 1954. She married a fellow named Oscar Hunter. They stayed married for a number of years, 20 years or so, and then they divorced. She kept the property, but she died in 1986 in New York without a will. So the property spent 9 years in the hands of a probate administrator of the city of New York before it was finally auctioned off for, in 1995, for $65,000. And the person who bought it turned around and sold it immediately for $130,000 very quickly. And the last time, 20 years later, this property turned over, it was for $1.2 million. So whoever invested in this property certainly would made some interesting money on it. Some of her work is in some local museums, in New York museums, and I think also there might be some in Washington, and I think maybe the Smithsonian, but I'm not quite sure about that. She's not known as a major artist. She was modern in her design of her prints and watercolors that she produced. And actually, Stephanie, around the corner there is on the other side of the table, I think in my briefcase is there. Just so happens I had one hanging on the wall. That's by Bernice B. Hunter from 1964. So a kind of show and tell moment for this house. Because the house has been so modified, it is extremely obscure. If I can, you can't believe how obscure it is, but yeah, this is the gated area of the house behind stones that have been put in place. Probably they were put in place in the 1960s or so. But you can't see the house. Completely obscure. And you can see that from the overheads of as well of the picture from the GIS, that it's simply a site and with buildings completely overwhelmed by foliage in all ways. So it's invisible. They're doing some structural replacements and mostly internal renovations. A lot of the renovations are parts of the house that are newer rather than older as well. So I see no reason to raise any issue with it, and if there's no problems with it, I would send back a response that we have no concerns on it. Okay,
Yep.
that's fine.
Yep.
That's, I'll do that as well. And the construction application for 11 Walnut in East Quogue. And Bill and Stephanie, I think both did a report on that.
Yes.
I can.
Do you want to present? You want to present it?
Yeah, I was just waiting for him to bring it up.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a dwelling on this property towards the front. That's the subject to the application. Behind it are 2 sheds. The house has an AYB of 1900, though we think it was actually a little earlier. The sheds, there's 3 different shed AYBs, but there's only 2 sheds on the property. 2 of them have AYBs of 1915. Where the other 1915 shed went, I'm not sure. There did seem to be some sort of remnants of what could have been foundations to them. One was turned into a patio at some point, but there's only one 1915 looking shed there now. It's in really poor condition. The roof and the rear wall of it are pretty much gone. It'll either disappear or we'll see a demolition application for that shortly. The other shed, AYB, is 1960, but the shed that's there looks more like 2010, so I'm not sure what happened to the 1960 shed. The shed that's there looks quite new. What's being done to the house is mostly on the rear of the house. There's a lot going on the interior, but as far as the exterior, there are 2 kitchen windows that will be removed on the right-hand side of the house. Then 2 windows on the rear of the house that'll be removed. Those will be replaced with a triple panel sliding door. Outside of that will be about a 5-foot deep deck and a step down to the grade. There are several historic resources in the area, number 4, 7, and 17 Walnut Avenue. This property is listed in the AKRF. It's EQ 48. It's also listed in the East Quogue Hamlet Heritage Area Report as number 138, and it's noted to be the H.E. Terrell home. The AKRF did note that the property was potentially landmark eligible under town criteria C. On the 1873 map, Walnut Avenue had not yet been opened. On the 1902 map, there was a private lane shown on there, which would later become Walnut Avenue. You can see the property, it has a house. The footprint of that doesn't really look similar to the footprint of the current house, but again, it mentions H.E. Terrell on there as the owner of the house. There are 4 other Terrells in the neighborhood, so it seemed that the family owned several properties, well, 5 if we include H.E. Terrell. Herman Terrell's mother was a carter just north of this property, is a Carter property, and if you go around the neighborhood, there are 6 properties owned by Carters. On the 1916 map, the property has now been subdivided into 2 parcels. You can see the original house now has a slightly different footprint, but the northern part of the property there is still H.E. Terrell. The one under it is A. Glendening, and through different things, there's several different spellings to Glendeling. He married one of the Terrell daughters, Edith May, and as we go through things, she has 2 different spellings for Edith and May. Stephanie found a number of articles that mentioned the Terrell family. I found more of them. We did find that the Terrell, Herman Terrell and his parents were all born in East Quogue, yet their first daughter was born when they lived in Santa Mauritius. And 1916, the Terrells moved to East Hampton, where he got a job that they referred to as the 7th man at the Southampton life-saving station. I'm not quite sure what the 7th man is. So that was interesting. 2 years later, he does move, or the family does move back to East Quogue. We did again find notices in the paper referring to that when he got a job for Mrs. Frederick, where did I put it? I guess he became an estate manager. She had an estate there. Yeah, it's in the report, but I'm not finding her name on here at the moment.
What?
No, when he moved back to East Quogue,
Oh.
it was,
They stayed at the house of the Browns
yes.
on Walker.
Yeah, we did find in 1888 that the Terrells were renting a house, so they must not have had that house at that time. Yet in another paper in 1898, we found a notification that Mr. Terrell of the life-saving station was vacationing in his home in East Quogue. So we figured that the house was built somewhere between 1888 and 1898. The AYB seems to be, of 1900, seems to be a little late. The Hamlet Heritage Area report seems to have 2 errors in it. They didn't find the house on the 1902 map, and they also decided that they thought it was more of a 1910 circa house, which didn't really seem to fit what Stephanie and I had found. Lots of notifications as to family visiting at the Terrell home. There are 2 notifications, one of the eldest daughter being married in the M.E. Church in East Quogue, later the second daughter being married and having the reception here at the house. So there's very little happening to the exterior of the house. It is in very good condition, very historic looking when you see it from the outside. There was a huge overgrowth of planting in front of the house. Yeah, as you can see there, you couldn't really see the house. That all appeared, well, it doesn't appear, that's all been removed now, and you can really get a good look at the house. In that photo, you can't even see that it has a wraparound porch that goes across the front and down the left side. All of that is now exposed. It's all in very good condition. The house is in great shape. I saw no reason to object to the application, as the majority of the work is on the rear of the house, and the 2 windows on the side. There's still enough windows on the side of the house that it doesn't look odd. Stephanie and I noticed that there was a change from the brick foundation to a block foundation, which almost makes it appear that part of the hipped roof on the rear of the house was an extension. And then later there was a little that's 2 stories. There was a 1-story extension of sort of an entry on the back of the house added later. And all of that's to remain.
So the rest are all references to.
Yes. And I did include a couple of nice photographs of the house as it currently exists. And I took a couple of the barn in the back, kind of having the feeling that it won't, yeah, here you can see that, yeah, all of that shrubbery in the front is gone, and you really get a good look at the house for the first time in a long time. They did mention in the application that they were going to be changing out some of the glazing in some of the second floor windows. A lot of the windows did have wavy glass in them. I wasn't sure which windows they were changing or why they were changing it.
I did notice that they're all single pane windows, but they have the hooks at the top where you could put storms on, and there probably were storm windows at one point on this house.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're lurking in the basement or gone, don't know.
Yeah, I didn't get into the house, so I didn't see them. Yeah, on the photo on the bottom, yeah, you can see where the little one-story addition was added onto the back. But also the foundation, somewhere around where the Bilko door is there, changes from brick to block. So it seems like perhaps the last 10 or 12 feet of the house was an extension, and they just continued the wall and the roof line out when they did it. Getting into the basement would have been great to see, or into the attic, what the history of the house was. Yeah, so here on the back, you can see that those two windows would be taken out. The oil tank would disappear. There would be a triple panel sliding door there, and then just a small deck coming out and a step. Yeah, this is the barn, which looks like it could be 1915. And as you can see through the door, you can see right out through the back wall.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's holding that barn up.
Yeah. Yeah, there is no real structure left to the rear wall, just a few pieces of the siding.
It's not strong enough to be re-roofed.
No, no.
But you could definitely see, well, yeah, here, one of the window on the side is a sliding panel, slid horizontally. And as you look up into the roof, you could see the original framing.
Looks like this
the
had
roof
been
layout.
picked up and have blocks put underneath the sill. of the-
Yes.
yeah.
To look at them, they didn't look as old as the building did, but they definitely weren't done recently.
And the old maps do show a barn, a small barn at the rear of the property.
Yep.
So my guess is this is the same vintage.
Yeah, there's a lot of light coming through that roof. And although the other AYB for the barns are 1960 and 1915, as I say, that barn or shed looks more like 2010.
So with respect to your observation that there's an embodiment of the distinguishing characteristics of an architectural type that applies to the house alone, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, very thorough, and your recommendation is
Yep, no
that
objection.
we not object to the proposed construction, mostly invisible to the street view of the property, and hopefully the house can find some additional life and preservation in the future. So, any questions from fellow board members? If not, okay. Do you want to file a response on that? Thank you, Bill. Okay, 693 Mecox Watermill, a proposed addition for a house that is probably 1840 or so in Mecox. Let me get out of this. It is a historic resource in AKRF. It's located in a, it has been modified in the past, as you can see from this viewpoint. It's not been a static building. If we try to look around, you can see that it once was a basic farmhouse for the Mecox area. Mecox was very early settled in the history of the town of Southampton. It was agricultural land, nice flat, close to the bay, fertile farmland, and a lot of the oldest houses in the Southampton town were to be found in that Mecox area as well. The earliest appearance of this house appears to be on the 1858 Chase map. And let me get my...
I did see it on the 1850 Halsey map. I just happened to go back and, which would be close to the 58. But it was the same owner.
Okay, well, just in, the assessor has it as 1842 on their database. And on the Chase map, it's a farmer, Samuel A. Cook. There were 3 Cook brothers, farmers, located next to each other on Mecox Road there, Samuel, William H. Cook, and John Cook. And their Cook family is an old settler family in Southampton town. I did find the deed, it was sold 1866 to George Hand for $2,500, mentioning it went with the dwelling house on the property. And the Hands held it for multiple generations. George Hand, he lived from 1824 to 1878, and then it fell basically to his son Frank Hand, Frank H. Hand, who lasted till 1951, not farming it, but farmed it well into the 1940s. And he was an active community citizen in Bridgehampton and Mecox for about 35 years. He was a director of the Bridgehampton Bank in the community, very active in church affairs, as civic-minded citizens of the time would be during that period of time. There's no great exceptional events associated with the place. It is a farmhouse of some character, but it has been altered as well. I did not see that there was, I believe the addition has already been done on the house. So I did not see any real reason to object. If you look at the house, basically it faces Mecox Road. Let me see if I can get a better date here to,
I drove by and it is obscured somewhat by screening at the road, but also screening close to the house. I didn't go on the property, but the best pictures were either in the application.
in the application, yeah. Yeah.
Or at the town website
Right.
from,
As you can see, it has this curved driveway. In front of it, there's plenty of screening for it. But the house has obviously been elongated and added to in previous years. I didn't,
saw a building permit in 2012 for renovation with a second floor addition of a balcony and a deck addition, but I thought this was gonna be redoing what
has been done before.
had been done before, but
Yeah.
I may be wrong on
Yeah.
that. It seemed to be the same, the one little place in the front and then at the rear.
So let me just pull up the application here for,
But there weren't interior pictures, so it was sort of hard to peg, you know, with the, from the interior, what age it might.
yeah.
I thought they were maybe changing those two, changing that. and
Well,
then
their
the-
description, the architects is very limited. A mudroom addition and replacing a deck and pergola with a porch. So I think they have a plan here for it. If I can get it squeezed down. It's very hard to make sense of the, visual representation here, but I don't think they're really altering the appearance of the front of the house as much of it as you can see on Mecox Road. This is a portion of it here. So,
Like they're altering the alterations. Altering the alterations,
Yeah.
maybe, I'm not sure.
yeah.
Because it's got the, that little covered porch now.
So I don't see myself any reason to
You know,
object to the addition. As I said, the house has been altered substantially over a period of time as well.
one thing I just noted, because I just looked up at the town, with GIS, and it said it was for a COA, which of course it's not, because it's not a landmark, it would be for, somehow that got put in possibly incorrectly, not that it changes what we would think, but the implication that it's a landmark and it's not.
Yeah, it is basically an application for construction. That's, yeah,
Exactly.
right. And there's nothing more to it than that. So is there any problems with this on behalf of anybody? Okay, if not, I will respond appropriately to that. 127 Springville Road, we dealt with last month. know if anybody needs to, it's basically a revision in the application that was proposed last month. Let me get rid of this here. Where's my,
This one seemed to be for a finished basement, to finish the basement off for an office.
right, yes.
Interior.
Right. We didn't object to it the first two times with the proposal for construction. It's not something that is historic, doesn't sit in a historic neighborhood of any kind, any concentration of properties with historic character. So if there's no problem with it, I will just send back a confirmation that we have no objection on that. Okay, referrals. 85 North Phillips Avenue, Spionk, which is a multiple lot subdivision.
Yes. This is a subdivision that we have looked at twice before. Once several years ago, when the buildings were still standing, it was proposed to demolish the buildings. We did not have any objection to that. The last time we looked at it, it's essentially the same as what's in this particular application. At that point, the buildings were demolished. In our response to the planning board, we informed them that we don't need to see any further demolition or construction applications for this property. I could not see any difference in this particular submittal relative to the one we most recently reviewed. I think the only thing that was left outstanding is this is in an archaeological sensitive area, and I didn't see that an archaeology survey had been done. At least it was not included in the submitted information. So I wrote a draft response to the planning board noting that, and that we didn't see any issues with respect to impacts on the historic resources of the town for this proposed subdivision.
Right. I think the closest historic resource is the train station.
Yes, I think that would be the closest
Right,
one.
and that's a ways away. So.
Yes.
Just as a reference for everyone, this is the property. I think it's about 8 lots might be in the subdivision plan. I've forgotten the number offhand. And
Yeah.
then, most of the historic resources are basically south of the highway. And this is the, let's see, where's the train station is here.
Yeah, just a little bit to the left, closer to the north, yeah, right there, right there.
Right here, yeah.
Yep, and that
A
building
little
has been
obscure in
preserved.
the color of the roof there, right here.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
it.
Okay, so we've communicated with the planning board on that already, so that's.
Yeah, I will finalize and send a letter out tomorrow.
Okay. 325 Rose Hill Road, Watermill. You have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I'm not quite sure why we got it, but you could pull it up. It's the Mercy Villa Retreat House, AYB 1998. They're going to just subdivide the property. I think it's currently 4.2636 acres. It's not an AKRF, but it is the former location of the Mecox Inn. But most people wouldn't know that unless you read Marlene's, Watermill book, or you're familiar with Watermill.
Yeah.
But that particular, it was the location of a 56-room Mecox Inn that was built in 1893. And they had soirees there and the yacht races and different types of events. But by 1906, it was sold to St. Joseph via seminary. and they continued to hold that for a number of years in World War II. This is as per Marlene's book, and some of it from one of the Watermill books. It was an army barracks, particularly after the saboteurs came, I think Germans came into Amagansett, they positioned some people there. After that, it was purchased by the Sisters of Mercy, and it became a retreat house from 44 to 1980. And around 91, I guess 81, they decided it needed to have full-time people living there because it was for insurance purposes. But by 1991, it was proposed the property had been 8+ acres, and it was subdivided. 4 here, 4 sold off, and they demolished the old Mecox Inn and retreat house. It was an old gambrel style home. You can see the old postcards, and built this new retreat house, which continued until recently. And it was 2012, there was a Sister Jackie living there. That was a hit and run involved on that road. None of these make it historically significant. I just thought since we were covering it, I would mention those things. Sister Jackie died, and there was an international manhunt to find the person. And since then, I think the aging population that was sold several years ago to developers. So there's nothing there. There'd be no archaeological study needed. I mean, it's
It's a two-lot.
Well gone.
It's a two-lot subdivision.
right. So they're going
Right,
to
so-
demolish the 1998 new building, and I assume they would have to demolish
Land
it
is worth
since-
more than the structures,
and make two
especially by the water.
by the water. Makes sense to me if you have 4 acres on Mecox Bay, if from an investment standpoint. I did happen to get to see the Mecox Inn when the sisters had it before it was demolished. They had some type of a sale there, and I was here during the summer, and I remember just being in awe of all the dark wood. But that's history, so as to speak. And I think my grandfather, I heard, used to sell or take, because it was right close to where his, the property that he farmed, would take food there. But it's history, so I'm not sure why we got it, David. It's got an AYB of 1998, and it's not in AKRF, but I'll file and let them know.
Okay, I don't see any problem myself with it, Just that, there are a few historic resources, 2 or 3 of them in that little neighborhood.
A couple of them were moved there, too, in
Yeah.
that Rosemary
so,
Law.
but
Well, there are
it
3 or
doesn't have
4,
an
right?
impact on them.
But,
And just as an observation of this area, this little place here, this is Mecox Bay.
Yeah,
And before there were roads, this was the crossing point
yeah.
for land travel, right here where this little white squiggle is.
They call it the waiting place.
Calves Creek crossing point. People would wade across, and it looks like there is a sand spit there that you could use and wade across even now at this point in time. That was before there was the Montauk Highway, Kings Highway, up here, crossing there. So this was a shortcut through Mecox. This was the property we were earlier talking about on Mecox Road, and Mecox and the farmland area that was among the first settled agricultural elements in the town of Southampton, going way back. So that's the neighborhood. Okay, so we're through with 325 with no concerns on.
Right, I would have had a concern in 1991, but
Right.
That's
So-
not the point.
And then we will go to 55 Ponquag. We have actually were here in 2021 when we approved the demolition of a house that had a balloon-type structure that was considered a fire trap of sorts because of that early structure, built probably about 1890 or so. But it was owned by the American Legion. They applied for demolition to tear down the house, and we reviewed it and did not object because the structure itself would not meet any kind of code for its form. And they in turn built a memorial for veterans where the star is on Ponquag Avenue in Hampton Bays. So this is the property that's of concern, and what they want to do is put an addition on their building here, which is not going to alter the streetscape really in any fashion. So, you know, from my perspective, I didn't see any problem, but I don't know how you might think about this, if there's any different perception of this. So if there isn't any concern about that, I will send back, this was a site plan review. If they're going to build an addition, I don't know if the building qualifies, but by age, the American Legion Hall, but we might not see this otherwise. So this will go back to the planning board without a problem. So, okay. 76 Main Street, West Hampton Beach, the Performing Arts Center. I didn't get a chance. I got a late email from the mayor of West Hampton Beach wondering what kind of progress there might be with respect to that intermunicipal agreement, and I don't know. We don't have any formal communication link with the town attorney's office who would be negotiating it, but perhaps did you collect any gossip, Julie?
No, I mean, I don't know where we
Right,
are.
and you know not.
Moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so, well, we'll do some checking out on the status of the intermunicipal agreement, and because she was asking whether it's in place and whether or not we can proceed with a landmark designation for it. That was the previous request.
Right.
And so, you know, we'll see if we can move that along with some inquiry. Stephanie, you had some concern about an application that was made that we previously reviewed in Remsenburg-Spionk?
Yeah, the owner, or 149 South Country Road, you know, we have recommended landmarking to the town board, subject to the owners receiving an easement offer from CPF that he finds acceptable. So the ball at this point is in the court with CPF, and I had conversation with Jackie over there about you know, whether they're moving forward or not, and she had expressed some concern about CPF has to expend funds every time somebody is looking to get, you know, an easement offer for the appraisal. And she was concerned that there might be a lot of these coming forward, and that there might be a lot of people just fishing to find out, you know, what they might get for their house were they to, you know, offer an easement, et cetera. So I think I was able to address her concerns because, you know, in this whole process, typically an applicant will come to this board first to go through the landmark review and recommendation process before they even go over to CPF and start discussing an easement. And usually in that process with us, we kind of figure out if the person is really serious about landmarking, and also whether the property is worthy of landmarking. And, there've been a couple instances recently where, the property has not risen to the level of being landmark worthy, and that, the whole process died before we even got to discussion of an easement. So I think I was able to reassure her that we're not looking to see a lot of these applications every year, and before certainly an applicant would approach CPF, they would be through the process here in terms of making a landmark recommendation. So at this point, they are moving forward, Jackie's moving forward with getting the appraisal done and developing an easement offer for that particular property. So.
And is there any need, the process of holding hands here is improving?
I think it is improving, yes. I think Jackie needed that understanding, and I think this particular applicant just needed some additional discussion and understanding of the process. So I think everybody's good right now.
So, okay, good. Now, moving next door to 151
Yes.
South Country Road, we reviewed a construction application for that property. You were concerned about it because there's a revision in the plan.
Yes, a portion of the structure, there was the original historic volume of the house. And then there was a breezeway that was basically a potting shed connected to that. And then connected to that was a non-historic volume that was the garage. And the proposal was to redevelop the whole structure, preserving the historic part, but making significant modifications to the non-historic parts. Well, apparently in the process of moving forward, now that we reviewed this and we had no objection, in the process of moving forward, they apparently determined that there were some significant issues with the non-historic portions, the garage portion and the breezeway portion, and they've been demolished. I drove by one day and they were gone. So apparently now the building department is requiring them to resubmit because there has been this significant change in, the proposed construction. And because this was all just transpired very recently, it didn't make it in time for them to submit an application to be considered at this meeting. They have to wait a whole another month before we could consider an application at a meeting. So I thought this would be something we could either discuss at this meeting and make a determination that this is not a significant change and we don't need to review it again, or the other alternative would be for them to submit an application and we could go through the usual Article 8 waive of a full review if the board felt we didn't need a full review. So that's the situation.
Well, let me suggest maybe for the board a process here to deal with the timing issues that might be involved. Since we have reviewed and we didn't have concerns before, that the new application, if the new application comes in between Stephanie and Bill and myself, we make a determination that it's not a significant thing, that we can respond to the building department, that we have no concerns with it. Is that
Actually,
okay on your behalf?
Bill may have to be left out, maybe.
Oh, okay,
recused 'cause
sorry,
he's the
Bill, we'll leave
architect.
you out.
So,
Stephanie and myself then, okay? So-
okay, so I'll suggest that they submit the application and that we will process it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that takes care of everything, all the properties except one from last month, and that's just to note that I haven't filed a report yet for One Bowers Lane watermill.
Yes.
The house with some ambiguity as to its origins. I had tried to track down more information, and the closest I could come was to an expression in a deed associated with the house that, maybe I have it here. And it looks like it might have been an original diamond house that preceded the second diamond house built on Flying Point Road that Susan reported on and collected the family gossip that that house might have been moved someplace. And in the legal trail with his house, it was sold to a Fanny Wilkinson, who, with her son from New Jersey, moved into the area, was in the area in 1860. But the deed indicates that at some point they felt that they had to insert the word dwelling after they had written it out, that she was buying a tract of cleared land lying in front of the house of Isaac C. Simon, but they inserted in front of the dwelling house as an amendment in the deed expression, which indicates there might have been an unoccupied house that Isaac Simon had on his farm as well, namely his newer house, the one that Susan was documenting for the Diamond family house in her report some time ago. So that suggests to me that that house was maybe earlier in date, and it had the date of 1830 in the assessor's information, and that fact probably got collected many years ago in terms of identifying the house. So I'm going to finish the report, and we were of a mind, Susan, you were not at our last meeting, but we were of a mind to express objection. Since that time, a public issue has arisen with respect to that property, namely the interest of the village of Southampton to put in a wastewater treatment plant on that site, which would explain a number of other things associated with the vibrations I got from this property. And that, of course, became public information in the Southampton Press last week. It pays to read the local newspapers. And the Southampton Press gave an account of a town board meeting at which public comment was being made about that project. And in the process, the neighboring property, which holds the landmark Diamond family house, has suddenly, the owner of that has suddenly become very interested and excited about not having it there, and has expressed his opinion in some communications. Which raises a question: is there something that might be said with respect to our landmark, the landmark halo that we put on this house, and whether or not we should speak for trying to positively preserve it in the face of some accompanying industrial type changes next door on this property.
think
nothing is called for, I think, immediately, because this will probably trickle out as a public discussion in the coming weeks. But is there something we should think about? Yeah.
I feel very strongly we should think about it, and I think we should voice our opinion. We went to great lengths to study the property in question. Wouldn't you agree, Susan? And I think the developer of the property worked very hard to comply with all of the requirements that we had laid before him in order to preserve that property, and worked with Dave to make that happen. It was a very creative subdivision solution to see an a new industrial development 20 feet from a landmark property, to me, is not appropriate. And we would never have considered that, never would have pursued landmarking had that been made available to us. Obviously, we understand that progress has to continue, but I don't consider this progress. I don't think this is an appropriate location for a village plant, sewage plant. It's town property in any event. But the worst is that it's in front of a landmarked property.
Any, Susan?
And I think, I concur with what you said, I think, but the thing I find really bothersome is the use of CPF money that can be used to preserve houses being used to purchase properties and then demolish in one that's in AKRF.
I agree.
So somehow the whole system becomes complicit in the demolition of the house. I find that bothersome, particularly sitting on our board and then thinking that another arm is going to contribute to demolishing it. I find that really bothersome.
What do you think, Bill?
Does anybody else have a sense that we should vocalize in favor of protecting this landmark? Is that,
I agree.
Is that
Yes,
a sense? Okay.
I think it's sort of a spit on our landmark to put something there right next to it, like that.
Because everybody sitting here tonight worked hard on that application.
Yeah. And to me, it's just a sense from the email received, it's a matter of trust, people
Yes.
coming to us and trusting our judgment, our encouragement, the encouragement you get, from the town to pursue something, that if they don't feel any type of protection, then you lose credibility.
And actually, we went to a great deal of effort to support this. We encouraged the planning board to rush their judgments and schedules in order to accommodate the demolition or the preserving interest that was there, and then the ZBA to get the variances to allow things to proceed as well. So there was a lot of investment of town energy and town effort to get this done. So I think it does deserve a voice from the Landmarks Board. And I will try to draft a letter, statement, appropriate to make the town board aware of our concerns with respect to this project then.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
I think it would also be interesting, and I'm not sure if it's possible at this point, is to see the house, the interior, or particularly the framing, to see if anything exists. If that would be at all possible, I think that would be
Would you be
beneficial.
interested in undertaking the project?
Well, you're working on the history, so I'm not sure.
It's not filed yet, and a request to inspect it would be appropriate.
If that's at all possible, I will see what I'll work on that. I'll let
Okay.
you know.
I've been by the house several times. It doesn't seem to be anybody there, but you
Right.
know, but.
But I would feel, I mean, of course, Vicky, and I'm not sure, Jeff, somebody with the architectural, if we could get besides just myself, to look at the framing and the basement, to see if it's a round brick basement or whatever, that partial, to see what else we can find
Yeah.
out about it, so I'll see what I can do. I also, and this is just, I assume it's public, if you go to Google, it's being advertised as a subdivision now, a 2-lot subdivision.
I hadn't seen that, but,
I think I caught wind of that maybe from the from
Yeah.
the article, and
Yeah.
if you,
In the press.
so.
that they noted the price that they possibly, well, there was a price given that may have been comparable to what CPF may have been paying for it, and it'd be divided into 2 parcels.
Oh.
But that hasn't occurred yet, it was just being advertised, like $4 million a parcel type thing. So, none of that's
Okay,
factual,
so this is,
but-
it's all speculative as to what
It
would
is
go
speculative,
on,
so what I
right.
said is, I'm just saying off the top of my head, the numbers that you could check on that yourself.
Oh.
But,
Okay, anyway, we'll
I'll see what I
carry,
can do about possibly getting
Yeah.
a site visit, some type of thing set up,
Okay,
to see if we
sounds
could
good.
find out a little bit more.
Yeah.
'Cause even if they don't put the sewage treatment there and they subdivide the property, that still, the house could still be endangered.
Oh, right, so
So, yeah. it's worth
anything is
well,
possible, so it's
probably
just.
a residential subdivision is less dangerous to the landmark.
Oh, yeah,
than-
Yes.
no, I agree with that, but I
Yeah.
just mean, the line might go right through where the house is or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, but, feel free to voice our concerns to support the landmark,
Right.
not to wait on, finding out the particulars of the house,
Yeah,
but to voice our
you know, it's a-
concerns for that proposal near the town landmark Diamond House.
There's, we won't get into the technicalities of the project anyway, so we'll
Right.
leave it, and I'll do the vocalization of support for the landmark and its environment,
Yeah.
where it sits there, okay? All right, Bridgehampton Historical District. We received an application from the Bridgehampton Civic Association. It was uploaded to the landmarks portal. It is the same identical information as the one sponsored by us in the prior month. So I would just ask if there is any problem with it or otherwise. Then I think we agreed it's complete and accepted as part of the application for the Bridgehampton Historic District. Okay, we will proceed going forward with that. There are a couple of items that still has to be kind of put in place in terms of communicating the project publicly, involving some reconfiguration of our website elements in order to make it easier for people to find the information with respect to the prospective historic district for Bridgehampton. And we'll work on that in the coming 2 weeks or so to try and get that straightened out. Involves getting your report in the right place on the webpage and things like that. Okay, anything else on the Bridgehampton Historic District? We do have Tom Watson from the
Tom Watson
Bridgehampton.
from Bridgehampton, the Civic Association. So are we any closer to having an approximate date as to when this application is going to go to Supervisor Schneiderman and the board? Because that will start the 45-day clock.
Probably, I hope within 4 weeks.
Right, within a month, okay.
Part of it is just getting some of the public access elements in place to, before it gets announced. When it gets announced, it goes as well to the town clerk. There has to be notification by the town clerk to all the property owners and
Okay,
so on.
so about a month
But,
then,
yeah.
before we, okay.
But
The
it's-
reason I ask is the Civic wants to do some sort of educational efforts before the public hearing. So it's very important for us to kind of know when.
What the window is.
What the window is. So the
I
public
will
yeah,
keep you apprised of the steps going forward.
right, okay, all right,
And
thank you.
certainly, you know, whatever the Civic Association wants to do to advance it would be helpful as well.
Okay, and just to give you a little heads up, like whatever we do in terms of some sort of educational effort before the public hearing, the Civic is not the experts. We can't answer questions. So we're hoping you or somebody from the board would be able to help us at this educational effort. Would that be possible, you think?
Well, I hope to get something like a frequently asked questions piece on the website.
Okay.
Along with that.
Oh, all right.
And there'll probably be other questions arising, and they probably wind up best directed in our direction and
Okay.
probably in my direction. But we'll get to that fine point in the
Okay,
process.
so you're, all right, so
Yeah.
you're doing something, okay. All right, because I'm getting a lot of pressure from the Civic to do something, but now that I know you're doing something, that might take a little pressure off us, Julie. Okay,
Well, I'm glad you're getting the pressure instead of me.
okay. All right, but the 4-week window sounds promising. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Tom. Okay, other matters, nothing on landmark inspections. Town-owned cemeteries, haven't gotten a chance to research the viability of some historic recognition or preservation elements with respect to town-owned cemeteries. The Stony Brook, Southampton Historic Buildings, we heard a report from Martha last time, and we'll keep that on the agenda going forward. Certified local government activity, there is probably nothing at the moment planned for that. Are there other things that are to be brought before the board?
I just have it as a quick one, not to make a decision, to think about it, but it's like submission deadlines. And I realize when there's been snafus in the submission process, going to the digital, I realize that when they are submitted, that your, staff needs time to process them. But what happens is, if we get them a week or 10 days before the meeting, sometimes there's not enough time to research, particularly if something else is going on in one's life. So, and other people have day jobs, so I don't know how you choose. But I was wondering, the possibility if we move that up to like the first Friday of the month type thing, I like a certain, that all the submissions would have to be in by a different date, and that would always allow a couple extra days for the staff to process it if something's late, and we would still be getting them with enough time to do the research that we need.
Yeah, the question is probably a combination of things. One is there is an application that's filed, and in theory, it's supposed to be 45 days till it's completed process, I think, back to the building department.
Right.
Otherwise, they can make certain assumptions.
Right.
So that's
I think
one.
it's 45 days from your meeting.
Oh, it's 45 days. I would have to check the language there. That would not seem to be 45 days after submission. maybe. But we'll have to check the language there, yeah.
It's just, and it's something, I'm just throwing that out, because I think a lot of times, I mean, I know for myself, if somebody gives me the deadline, I'm gonna probably wait till the last day to submit it, maybe at 4 o'clock or 3:55, whatever. So if you move it up a couple days, it may not affect that. The person who's submitting it as much is the person who's the group that's receiving it, trying to figure out what type of historic value. Some of them are easy because they're in AKRF or we've researched that area a lot, but some are novel and they really need a site visit. They need that extra, research time. So I just throw that out.
Right, well, that's always going to be a question of time pressures, I think. Even if you move it back, there's going to be some instances in which time will always be a factor in trying to process these things, so.
Yeah, it just might alleviate that that usually if you get it by that Tuesday that you need to get on it versus waiting to a week before and receiving it. But anyways, that's just a thought, so we don't need to discuss it any further, but maybe I'll remind people in a month or so.
Yeah. Yeah. So other than that, we'll keep the thought in mind and check out the timing
Yeah, and that's
elements
just
of
a
it.
thought.
So. Any other items to be brought before our meeting? If not, thank you. Coming out on school board election night. And we'll have this meeting now adjourned at 9:12 p.m.